Across 75 years of Formula One, which people, cars and events have changed the sport forever?
For me, it was more from the outside was, I think, Senna. There was the before Senna and after Senna, and how, I mean, in your days, racing was dangerous and a lot of steps were made. But the Senna moment really changed the outlook on, okay, no, we really, really need to do something about it. Also because I think the crowd watching the race had a different view. Where in the past it was part of being a hero to risk your life, and then in the mid-90s suddenly it wasn't being a hero anymore. That really had a big effect on all of us.
I think the discovery of the ground effects, and I think that, in my opinion, revolutionized the modern era of motorsports, probably in the most gigantic way, in my opinion.
It represented what F1 always was. Always trying to fit until the modern rules that are quite strict. It was always an evolution.
Oh, yeah. Well, indeed, obviously, then I had to be restricted. You know that because you could go crazy with that. You know, to make it so efficient that all you had to do is turn the steering wheel for anyone. Yeah. But it had to be obviously controlled. But at the same time, like you see, it's prominent today in every form of motorsport.
Oh, it's gone back to ground effect.
You wanted to talk about 82.
Oh yeah, the change of weights, come on.
Three significant things is the driver's strike in South Africa. The first time, because it was your dad who looked after us, because we were new drivers there. We all went on strike instead of racing. And I think when Bernie took over the reins as Formula One, the emperor, and then that fateful day changed racing forever in 1994 at Imola, when we lost two great drivers, Roland Rasselberger and Ayrton Senna. I think that affected the sport forevermore.
Yeah. Well, I fully agree with you. But we had all of us, we had experiences of driving different generation of cars. Mm-hmm. And when you do test those mega old cars from 50s example, you seriously need a
balls.
You need guts. You need a serious guts to maximize it, you know. And again, going my era, which is 90s, late 90s, early 2000. I mean, it was fantastic. You know, it was so safe. You know, you felt really secured, so you could take incredible risks. But again, those drivers who were doing those times, and we're talking about those three gentlemen there, they were in an era when the Formula One cars were mega dangerous.
But you died. You died in your car and was jump-started with Sid Watkins. That was the start you saw, that we never had a Sid Watkins before.
Exactly.
So without Sid Watkins, we wouldn't have you here today. Yes. And that Formula One presented itself very well over the years. Considering what we are today, it is absolutely fantastic.
When I remember when I first joined Formula One, Jackie Stewart, Joe Bonnier, we founded the Grand Prix Driver Association. Yeah. Cool. And the work that Jackie has done, Bonnier, a lot of drivers to improve safety. And now how much safer is racing than before. Statistically, it's fantastic. You know, we remember late 60s, beginning of the 70s, was 7-1, the odds. We're like 21 drivers. By the end of the year, 3 would not be there. And this is incredible statistic. And thanks to the work that Jack, you done, and everybody who helped you change motor race. And that's, you know, like my son is racing now, I'm very not so concerned. You know, the safety is so much better. Thank you, Jack.
You raced in the dangerous times. You raced in the much safer times. Was the risk and danger part of what made it exciting for you to be special and better than the others back then? Not as a father, but as a young racer.
But you know, we knew every time going to the race, we had a high risk, but we had the passion, full committed to race, but it was tough. And like
at that point, that's all we knew at that point as far as the safety aspect. But if you did not welcome the safety that came along, not just the cars, but the circuits as well. I mean, let's face it, today's drivers have the best chance ever to retire on their own terms.
Yes.
And that, as the sport became more and more commercial, it would not have survived because, sponsors that spend millions of dollars to be part of a team, they don't want to go to funerals. They want to celebrate. So today the sport evolved responsibly, in the right way but it's never going to be 100% safe, which obviously that's the lure of the challenge. But the fact that it is right now as safe that we could possibly make it still is a plus, a total plus, in my opinion, anyway.
But I think a sport managed by old people, before the war, old people. Motor racing was dangerous, I tell everybody, because at that time there was not enough marshals. I had an accident at Spa-Francorchamps. There were no officials at all. And I was trapped in the car, and it was a big shunt, the only accident I had in my whole life. But the fact that Graham Hill went off on the same road of water, so did Bob Bondurant, and that's the only reason that I'm here today, because they got me out of what would have been death. And I was trapped in the car, and I was in bad shape. The good news was that they found 3 nuns standing at the door, and they ran away. Graham and Bob Bondurant ran away to try and get help. The nurses came in, and Graham had taken all my clothes off because I had been burned with all the fuel. And of course the nurses came in and put my clothes back on, soaking wet.
Because of the nuns?
Because of the nuns. No, I think the point was that it was at that time that I woke up to try and do something with the Grand Prix Drivers Association, which I did for a good many years. But now we have a cockpit of a car that's a survival cell. We've never been better prepared, ever, than we are today.
Yeah.
But it has been a slow process. In fact, I don't think you can, for example, when I started Formula One, in 1982, we had the accident of Riccardo Paletti in Canada. We started to work on the crash test. After in 86, we had the accident of Elio in Paul Ricard. I was there.
Yeah.
We had no marshal, no safety, no ambulance, nothing. So suddenly things have changed, and then the accident of Philippe Streff in Brazil, that's when we started to have the medical hospital, a small hospital at the track, with Gérard Saillant. All these examples, we have many, many examples. The people started to talk about safety. We had Didier Pironi, a little bit myself, and then slowly it went into the process. And for sure, when the big constructors, they arrived in Formula One, we had a little bit more money involved in that. And they did not want to have this responsibility. When you have independent teams, it was a little bit different, you do take care and do what you can, And for sure what Jacques said about when Ayrton had his accident in Imola, then we have a big change because the philosophy could not be the same, So slowly it came into on a commercial way and a technical way. For me, the turbo engine in 79 first time, and then the arrival of the big constructors has changed completely the thing and the process.
Who was the biggest racing hero growing up and why? I think for me it was probably people like Fangio, who had no seat belts and no helmets as such, and some of them didn't even have goggles. I mean, amazing, wasn't it? I couldn't drive a car without a seat belt.
Me as a teenager, still living in Italy, when Formula One became official, I was 10 years old. And it attracted me immediately because of Italy being so involved, Ferrari, Maserati, Alfa Romeo. And my idol at the time, was like a Fangio for sure. I even have his helmet. But it was Alberto Ascari.
Yeah.
And here again, you just something. I wanted to be as a god, if I could just be like Ascari when I grow up. And that was the thing that started the flame for me. where after seeing the Formula One race, first Formula One in 1954, age 14, I didn't have a plan B for my life, even though it seemed like the impossible dream. So that's how powerful that was, you know, to be inspired by someone like that. And again, you know, I just look back and it's been so important, you know, for me. It shaped my life.
Mm-hmm. To me, being Latin America for sure was Fangio.
Yeah.
We had another good Brazilian driver who Enzo Ferrari was called Chico Landi. I grew up in Brazil watching racing. And then, you know, as a teenager, I was following Formula One. I was going crazy in Brazil, you know, with the time of Jim Clark, Jack, Graham Hill, you know, Bruce McLaren, and, you know, including Mario just started before me. And it was a fantastic era to inspire us.
It's a bit different for me because obviously my dad was my hero when I was a kid.
Of course, yeah.
But also the first time I got in an F1 paddock, you know, there was Mario, there was you, and I was in like a little kid. I had my own tiny little race suit. I would walk around to get it signed, so it was special. But then when I was old enough to want to really understand about racing, you know, there were two edges. You know, there was both Alain and Nigel, and these are the racers I was, you know, you guys watching racing, and you were both different edge of the sword to emulate. You know, there was the work getting everything out of the setup, and then there was the beast, you know, overtaking drivers on the outside and coming with the data I had. Obviously, you know, the overtaking around the outside meant a lot. So taking these two and trying to put them together was really, really something that helped me then build my career. So I was very lucky to then I raced against all you four in different. I raced against you, and Nigel, the three of you in IndyCar, my first year. So as a 24-year-old, you know, like you grow up having heroes and you race against them. That was a lot of fun.
What quality does a driver need to become a world champion? And what qualities do you most admire about each other?
Passion and love, obviously. You know, you have to think for the sky. You don't settle for anything. You have to at least think for things that almost seems impossible.
Yeah.
Because you know, you're in a world where there's always someone better than you. But how do I overcome that? How hard do I have to work? And you always sort of measure yourself against your competition. You know, and you admire everyone around you. You know, obviously, because what they have accomplished, how do I do the same thing and maybe even better? So all of that drives you to work harder. And again, the other thing, hopefully you're with a team that gives you the equipment. You cannot perform miracles as a driver, not just passion and love. You got to have the equipment, a team with a capital T, to be able to give you, furnish you with the equipment capable of achieving that.
Yeah, but normally, if you have that passion, that talent, you'll end up in the good team as well.
Well, exactly, but you need both. Yeah,
you need both, but it takes also work ethic.
Yeah,
and you always have to remind yourself, someone can do it better than me. What can I do for the next step? Even when you've won everything, you think, okay, I'm fantastic. No, you're not. There's something you can always do better, so you don't get caught out.
Amen.
I think we all had the connection with the team also, you know,
With the engineer, with the team.
The engineers, with the team, and to motivate them is something that very difficult to explain sometimes, working or not.
Chemistry.
It's almost like an abstract.
But I think as this high level, like any high level sport, international, like Formula One, you need to have the mental power to work under stress. When the weekend doesn't work, you have to come back strong again, be consistent the whole year.
And you need to give confidence to the team, even if you're not, you know, doing a proper job. Sometimes, you know, it's difficult. Yeah.
And on my time, the most quality I admire on each other was when I was dicing with anybody, and they respect the physical size of my car.
Yeah, that's true. How you can trust, trust.
You can trust.
I mean, you can be maybe touching,
That I race
but not being ridiculous. And you know,
Yeah, that stopped in my
and yeah, you know, and everything. But I tell you what, though, after a while, you always recognize the one person potentially you cannot trust. The top talent usually will be fair, in my opinion. They're very seldom where you know you will not see that, and that, you know, to me that's where you respect your competition.
The one thing that's more than perhaps anything else is the quality of our mechanics and engineers.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the best engineers I could ever have had. I never drew blood from my body when I was with Ken Tyrrell and the engineers that he had. Not one time did I suffer from it. And I think the quality of mechanics is perhaps not seen to be enough, because without them, we wouldn't be doing it with consistency. So it's not just going fast, it's surviving with the right equipment, with the right people, and to stay out of trouble.
And to add to what's admirable is you can see here the fire is still there. Like the real champion, passionate, will always love racing, always has the fire inside somehow. Competitive fire, doesn't have to be F1, but it's always present. And we see it every time we get somewhere and we start talking, going back 30, 40, 20, it doesn't matter. We're still in that racing mentality. And then I think that's what makes a big difference, is you're always hungry for more.
What's your single happiest memory from your time in Formula One, and in which one moment did you struggle the most? Yeah.
Well, the happiest moment days, I had a lot of happy memories of racing time, but one of the memories are very strong was because when I started Formula One, it took me about 7 years to win the first Grand Prix. So it's a long journey. I'm sure many of you have experienced a lot of these kind of things. But one of the happiest memories what I remember was when the team, we finally start getting better results. So you can see light end of the tunnel. But what was the happiest moment was the Adrian Newey. When he joined to our team, I said, that's it, guys. So that was I would say that was the final dot for the success of McLaren, the time when I was there. I think when you talk about the worst moments, of course, comes mind your accidents, what you experience. So they are always worst things, but you have to always try to turn them other way around to find the positive out of it. You know?
If I can say myself, I can say two. Is my sorry, Nigel, my win in '86.
Thank you.
In Melbourne, in Adelaide, sorry, the championship. Because but not only the win by itself, but it's they deserve to be world champion. But at the end, it was all the work of the team for the whole season that we had been allowed, for us to be world champion. And the second one is my win with Ferrari in 1990 in Mexico, because that was really an unbelievable moment of, joy inside the car for 2 hours. And the struggle the most, I mean, when I had my racing team, not the driver, but owning the racing team in France. I don't know if the fact that France is was the problem.
Still young.
So, but yeah, I struggle a lot, yeah. Still remember Mario's pole position in '82 at Monza. So I remember maybe more than himself, it was such a big surprise. And, that's good to have memories like this, 40 years later.
If I can go faster, that'll probably achieve what I'm looking for.
Top quality race car driver could do whatever he wanted to.
All the fans out there and all the supporters for the years, and especially my country, and this is all for you.
Since starting Formula One, it has been a fight every year to win races and to be a world champion.
Today feels great. Championship feels great now. It's a big party.